they've left me alone for 2 hours. Now that I start recording, they're yowling. Cat problems. Hey folks, welcome to episode 4 of Another Way on YouTube. I'm KJ Bell, and today we're talking about difference. So if you click the link in the description and listen to the full-length podcast episode, you will find out very quickly that the bulk of it I recorded like 6 months ago. Before I really started doing the podcast regularly, I recorded this little chunklet. It's before the election because you hear me talk about one of the presidential candidates. And that's all we're gonna say about that. But it was a night when I was kind of frustrated about some of the things that were going on because things are so decisive these days, what with Brexit and with the presidential election, both in the US and in France, and some of the other things that's been going on. Just people are so divided, and it was very frustrating the night that I recorded this. So we're gonna talk about it today. So first off, if you're going to be a creative person, or really just like a decent human being, you have to have a certain level of empathy. You have to be able to put yourself in another person's shoes and see another viewpoint. And sometimes that's tricky to do when you only know this, when you only know what is your life. That can be a tricky thing to do. And one of the other problems that we've got is we're all just kind of mixing around here and there's so many people. I wrote a thing one night that I really loved, and I don't even remember what the context was, but the line was, we're all just drifting through each other's emotional secondhand smoke. And there's a thing about that, like the energy of a room, if you're in a room with a person who's in a really bad mood, that can take you down, or if you're in a good enough mood, maybe you can bring them up. It just depends. And so it's all about seeing the other side of that perspective. These days we've gotten stuck into such binary thinking of, well, if you like this, you must dislike this, and it's very black and white. And the problem we have is that there are so many different shades of gray in between everything, and we don't tend to see a lot of those shades of gray. We tend to be very it must be one or the other, and that's not how life is. That's how our culture is, but that's not how life is. It don't work like that. It don't work like that. One thing that I say all the time, and it's kind of become an affirmation that I write down quite a bit in my writing practice, is that silence is deadly, but yelling is unproductive. Listening is the key to everything. And here's the problem. We've got a lot of silence going on, which is very obvious in the fact that there are so many people who are angry because they haven't felt like they've been listened to, and now they're not being silent anymore. So it's a good thing, I think, that a lot of these issues are coming up, because if you allow that to fester, it just creates a lot of problems. Just like a lot of problems. Having been in the closet at one point in my life, I understand how that works, because that can mess you up. So we've got that silence and that denial that's going on, but then we have the other end of the spectrum where we're just yelling at each other a lot of the time. And I don't necessarily mean in volume. I mean, we're just talking at each other constantly without any real attempt to listen to what everybody else is saying. And that's what we gotta do. We gotta listen to other people. And now we bring this around to the differences, because it's finding those people who are different than you that helps you grow. Because if you have never met anybody of another ethnicity, of course you have no idea what they're like. One of my favorite stories that I talk about in the podcast is I was listening to NPR one day, and they were talking about the 2016 election and how the candidates were going after each other. And there was a moment where they talked back to the 2008 campaign when it was Barack Obama and John McCain, and a lady stood up at one of John McCain's events and said, "I don't trust Barack Obama because he's an Arab." And John McCain shut her down and said, "No, that is not true. He's a good man, and we disagree on some fundamental things, but he is not a bad person." And he knew that because he'd experienced a different perspective than his. That lady had no idea because she'd only seen the portrayals of an Arab that say bad. Because she just didn't know. My best friend is a black lady, and I met her when I was 19, and I had grown up in a town where there were like 5 black people. So whenever I went anywhere where there were more black people or Asians, it was very odd. Not because I dislike black people, but just because I had never seen more than, 5 at one time. I grew up in a town with a lot of white people, a lot of Hispanic people, and a lot of Native people, because I was on the edge of the Navajo Nation. And so that was what I knew. But traveling let me see these other things, and that's how you grow. But if I had not met her when I was 19, and we hadn't had some of the discussions that we've had, I would have a completely different perspective on race than I do right now. Because, I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but I am a white man. As much as I would love to be a strong black woman, I'm just a white boy. So you need to find those people who are different than you. You need to find that other perspective, because that will make you a better creator. It will make you a better human being, really. The other thing you have to do when you find somebody who's different than you is you have to listen to how they say something just as much, if not more, than what they actually say. Because think about this, have you ever read a transcript of something and then watched the video or listened to the audio of somebody actually saying it? It completely changes the meaning of things. And you can use all the right words and all the right terminology and still have a really bad meaning behind something. And we tend these days to just get so locked in political correctness that we go, oh, you used the wrong word. But you have to listen to what people are saying too. You have to listen to the intent behind things. So I think that's it for today. Subscribe, one of those directions. You can listen to the podcast in the description below. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @KJBell. I post lots of nice photos. At least I think some lovely photos. Any Fab fans out there? Maybe? No? So subscribe, and I'll be back next week. I swear if that didn't record.